Streaming services have completely overtaken our cultural life. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today I want to talk about how streaming has reshaped and is remodeling our interaction with our cultural and entertainment world. Of course, streaming had existed pre-pandemic. Netflix was utterly ubiquitous by the time this hit. I would have conversations with people across the board and say, look, have you seen such and such on Netflix? I wouldn't ask people if they had a Netflix account. If they said they hadn't seen the show, I would tell them to go watch it on their Netflix. I would just assume that they had Netflix or access to it because it become part of all the furniture that we now assume that people have. Thus, the pandemic certainly didn't create this trend, but with all these lockdowns and the closure of all other forms of entertainment, such as the cinemas, the shows, the theme parks, all of that, then the major companies, and I'm thinking of Disney in particular, have shifted and gone all in on delivering services through their streaming platforms. Now, I originally believed that this was just a crutch these companies were using because all the other alternatives were gone and they had sunk so much money into their major AAA titles, various films and major blockbuster shows, that really they had no alternative but to deliver that through their streaming platforms, such as Mulan, Wonder Woman, and the like. Well, that's true. It is used because there's no other alternative. But here's the shocking thing. When I went and looked at Disney's share price, I saw that they are at an all-time high. They lost more than half of their value with the massive crash in early 2020, and rightly so, because all cinemas were closed. Their Disney World, Disneyland theme parks are all shut down. They don't have any other, major blockbuster titles coming off on the pipeline because they can't really film shows on location around the world. They can't travel. They can't bring people together at an acceptable cost. And thus, creating new major movies down the line is also difficult, not just the ones that they have wasted money on in the pipeline. So I'm like, well, of course it's gone down. But yet they have a absolute total economic recovery. Now, why is that? Well, part of that is because there is a general recovery on the share markets, and therefore, Disney as a major traded stock is likely to benefit from that. But more than that, their Disney Plus subscription service, streaming, has 86 million subscribers worldwide. In such a short period of time since its launch, it has become a major market player, and second only to Netflix, which has 195 million. And that subscription base, that share is eroding rapidly on a daily basis. Hulu has 39 million subscribers. I think HBO Plus has about 13 million subscribers. And they have become a huge part of how we consume our content. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing from a storytelling perspective and from a cultural perspective? From a storytelling perspective, it has the potential to be good. And I think of shows that have been serialized do allow for long-form storytelling. There's a renaissance of shows that have come from the past that weren't as popular at the time they were out because they were subject to the vicissitudes of commercial television. And I'm thinking specifically of Star Trek Deep Space Nine here, a fantastic serialized show, but sandwiched between The Next Generation and Voyager, subject to weekly shows with lots of ads. And so it was very hard for the audience to follow these long, overarching stories and really appreciate the depth of character development and meta plot that this show presented. Well, you can do that in streaming services. In fact, they do in almost every streaming service. When you watch a show, often the entire season comes out at once. You watch it at your own pace, and there's always the overarching threads from the first episode connecting right to the end episode. It isn't like individual vignette subplots that are contained within each episode. Often the end of an episode might as well just be a break or a cliffhanger for you to watch the next one and then continue your binging experience. It is it does lead to respect of the audience. You can tell longer stories, more thoughtful stories, by taking advantage of this binging streaming trend without the annoyance of all of the ads that you would normally get from that kind of experience. So that's a really positive thing in terms of storytelling potential. And there are some great shows, The Expanse, Marvel's Daredevil, things like that are really taking advantage of that format. So hats off to that. At a cultural level, I am worried. I am really worried that the same thing will happen to our entertainment as is happening to our media. When I think of the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of these massive media conglomerates that now have purely subscription-based models, well, the only thing they're interested in is maintaining and reflecting the opinions of their readership base so that they can continue to get subscribers and maintain a loyal following. And that means playing into their biases. So the rage bait, the viral articles, that gone are the days of these massive investigative journalism budgets pursuing the truth regardless of the ideological preferences of their editors or indeed their own readers, because the advertising base is completely gone. They could afford all of those things. They could afford to have journalistic integrity because they had mountains of cash falling on them, because it was the only way that advertisers could communicate their products to the public. And therefore the media stream was basically a matter of competing with one another for prestige. Whereas now, in order to get a lot of money, you need to create a lot of anger. You need to create a lot of emotional reaction, both in your readership base, but also among the general online zeitgeist, in order to get your things kind of commented on or retweeted or, shared and made them go viral in order to drive traffic. So this is going to be the same problem for the streaming services, in that people will be creating content not because it's necessarily the fantastic story that is going to challenge you, artistically, but really they're going to go, okay, what sort of things does this person like, and how can we play it down to the lowest common denominator? So I think this is just going to light a fire under the sort of cultural warrior, identity politics, social justice stuff that we are seeing in various shows. Basically, in lieu of story, in lieu of character development, in lieu of story arc, we just get, the right representation, the right politics. But that will be for those streaming services and will attract people to those services that are primarily interested in that particular representation. Whereas those that are interested mostly in, high-level story, maybe like the Viking series and that sort of stuff, they might be attracted to other series. And I think HBO would probably be at the top of that list in terms of just really quality, hard-hitting series that we've seen over the past many years. The True Detectives, the Game of Thrones before it went to hell, True Blood, that sort of stuff. So I worry that we're going to create a cultural tribalism as well as a media tribalism. And that means that when you go to the office and you say, look, have you seen this series? The answer is not going to be an automatic yes, and then you have that connection. It'll be, oh, I don't have a Disney Plus subscription. I'm not really interested in their content. Well, I think that is going to become a political signal as well as a social signal. And I think we don't need that. One of the things we need is to get away from all of that and be able to use our entertainment world as a mechanism by which we actually connect and break down those things that would otherwise divide us. I'm truly concerned that we are going to become tribal, not just in our media landscape, but also our cultural landscape, and in the isolation that comes with the streaming service where it's all in one's own home. They're not out there at the cinema. They're not out there at the concerts. They're not out there interacting with other people. And so that brings a whole other wave of potential issues with that, whether or not people becoming too isolated, whether the psychological issues that have developed during the pandemic era become endemic as a consequence of the streaming services, where people spend just too much time by themselves in front of a screen watching something. That I think it brings back a lot of the concerns of when TV was originally invented. And a lot of those concerns were justified. So this could be that on steroids. We will see. But my main concern is when you have a subscription service, that means that in order to actually view a particular thing that you would otherwise see in isolation, so a major blockbuster film comes out, well, you can only watch it on a particular premium service, and you can't go and watch it in the cinema because it's not released there. Well, that's going to mean that a lot of that is inaccessible unless you subscribe to that service. But the subscription will be about one's identity, one's kind of social values, rather than just one's entertainment. And even if it was about the entertainment, then it's going to be difficult to have that shared experience with random people as a way of breaking down the ice with new strangers and things. A, because you're not going to meet them often enough because you're going to be at home watching the streaming service. But B, you're not going to have that shared experience. You're not going to be able to say, what do you think of the new Star Wars? Because they'll say, I don't have Disney Plus, so I didn't watch it. Whereas if you go watch Star Wars at the cinema and it's accessible to everybody, well, then you have that icebreaker. In short, I think that streaming services are good in their storytelling potential, but problem when it comes to continuing to divide us as individuals and as communities. We're going to spend more time at home watching these streaming services. I do think this is going to be permanent. And because of the massive competition that is underway in the streaming world, where people are going to channel content only to their particular platform, that means that people are going to have to make choices over what they see, and they're not going to have those shared experiences that they can interact with people that they don't know very well, and to be able to have that as a human connection. That's my view. It's just a preliminary set of thoughts. Do let me know what you think about streaming services. How much time do you spend on streaming services? Do you have a Disney Plus subscription? Do you have HBO? Do you have multiple subscriptions? How do you divide your time between them? I'm really interested in seeing how this impacts all of our change of behavior. And I have to say, I was just blown away by how much money Disney is making out of this, that they can actually recover all of their other businesses just from this one service. Thank you very much. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Thank you.